Hey, what's up internet? Today I went out and bought myself one of these. Yeah, that's one of the downfalls of having a small YouTube channel, is that you gotta buy your own hardware. And you know what, I'm fine with that. It's a little bit of an impulse buy. I was gonna hold off for a little bit because my 970 has been treating me very well since I bought it not too long ago. But I hadn't seen one of these out in the wild yet, only on like Amazon and of course NVIDIA's website, EVGA, all that type of good stuff. But I went into my local Best Buy today just to kind of poke around, and they had one. I was like, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this. So I thought I'd run through a couple benchmarks, compare it to the 970, and see how it gets on. Now there's gonna be a little bit of a difference in the benchmarks that I run. Most of the time, save for Rise of the Tomb Raider, they'll have like hair effects or tessellation, all that stuff. They turn that off. And then for I think Grand Theft Auto 5, most people take the advanced graphics options and they turn those all the way off. Not me. I'm not worried about a best case scenario between the cards. I want to see how the cards perform against each other with the way that I actually play the game, and I play the game with all that shit turned on. So that's the only fair way to test them. So without further ado, let's pop open the box just to see what comes inside, and then we'll run through some benchmarks, and we'll see the difference between the 1070 and the 970 in an actual real world scenario, not just best case scenario. Alright, well, let's dig into this. I haven't opened this at all, so I have the trusty old dragon knife here, just in case there's any tape or cellar tape or cellophane, as they say in other countries. But let me take a look here, see how this opens. Got it right here. There we go. That's a nice little packaging here. So I do have some tape on the side here and here. Let's pop in. And now. Oh, look at that. There she is. Cool, so we got it's like our software and stuff. We won't be using that. But then here is the meat of it, the GTX 1070. And of course, that's the coolest bit right there. I mean, you can see it on the video, but it looks better in person. You can read GeForce GTX right through the fan. That's cool. So, in true toolbag fashion, when I was doing the benchmarks on my 970, I did not turn off VSync. So, Rise of the Tomb Raider and Shadow of Mordor both cap out at 60 frames per second on the 970 on my rig. I imagine it would have been higher than that, but I had VSync on. However, as you will see in just a minute, Grand Theft Auto 5, that was not the case. So we'll still get a real-world comparison between the two cards, but I'll still show you what Shadow of Mordor and Rise of the Tomb Raider benchmark at on the 1070 with everything completely maxed out. So let's take a look at the settings that I'm running on Grand Theft Auto 5, and these were the settings that I was running. These are the settings that I'm running on the 970. I have everything, like a lot of your advanced graphics options are turned on. I have everything turned up, so I'm getting just under 3.5 gigs worth of memory usage. We just passed VSync, as you can see it's on, but just about everything is set to very high, except for the textures. I have those, I believe, on high, or maybe they're on very high, and ultras, whatever the max is for textures, I'm one under that, with everything else pretty much cranked up. So here it is. Here is the 970 with everything cranked up for the most part, but textures being held back a little bit. And we'll see what the benchmark is for these. Even with VSync on, it's not going to matter. I'm not going to hit 60 frames per second, I don't believe. So here we are. So bouncing between 30 to 40 frames per second. And again, this is the 970. And the Hollywood, the Vinewood sign, pretty solid 30 frames per second around there, holding fairly strong there. And then over here, we're upwards in the 40s to 50s. So having VSync on, as you can see with the 970, doesn't really make much of a difference. It's not going to hit 60 frames per second with all this stuff turned up. So let's go over to the 1070 and see what it can do. So these are going to be run under the exact same settings as the 970, and as you can see, we're already going a little bit higher into the mid 40s on this one, as opposed to dipping into the 30s with the 970. So even hit upwards of 50 here. Now for the Vinewood sign, we were holding strong at what, around 30 frames per second, and so now we're at say 39, 40. So easily already a 10 frames per second boost under the exact same settings, just going to this other card, and even hit up to 50 frames per second. And now we're going to go back to, I believe, the trailer park area, where we were seeing it hit upwards of 50, but it was mainly hanging around in the 40s on the 970. So let's see what the 1070 is going to bring here. As soon as she loads. So now we're looking in 50s. It hit 70 for a second there, but holding fairly strong in the well, now it's dipping down into the 40s, whereas the other one was dipping into the 30s around that spot, I believe. So another 10 plus frames per second advantage there for the 1070. So now let's take a look at Rise of the Tomb Raider, and now I have everything cranked. So on the 970, I had everything turned up except for the textures. The textures I had set to, I think, high or very high. I apologize. It's whatever one notch is under the highest. So now, on the 1070, I have everything cranked up to the highest. Now remember, I got 60 frames per second on the 970, but I had a VSync set up, but the 970 could never run this setting. So let's see what the 1070 does on Rise of the Tomb Raider with everything cranked, tessellation on, hair effects on, everything cranked. You're probably not going to see the amazing over 100 frames per second on this one because, again, I'm using settings that people typically don't use to benchmark, and there we are. We're, 85 frames per second overall score with everything cranked up? You know what, I'll take that. So now we're going to take a look at Shadow of Mordor, and this is running at the absolute highest ultra resolutions, the Ultra HD texture pack, whatever the hell they call it. The one where you need like 6 gigs of VRAM or higher. The 1070 has 8, so I got everything maxed out to the top on Shadow of Mordor. And it's doing pretty good. Really wish I hadn't left VSync on for the 970, but I'm not popping it back in just to rerun the benchmarks. Sorry. But there we go, with everything cranked, looks like we got a max frame rate of 209, a minimum of 69, an average of, what's that, 108? You know what? That's not bad either. So there it is, there's some real-world testing of the GTX 1070. Not probably the best comparison because I effed up on the 970 benchmark, so I do apologize on that. But you were able to see a bit of an improvement through Grand Theft Auto 5, on average about 10 frames per second better. And then I was able to crank everything up, which I didn't show this, but I cranked everything up to the max, and there really wasn't a degrade in frames per second. It pretty much ran exactly the same. Shadow of Mordor runs at over 100 frames per second with everything completely cranked to the max. And Rise of the Tomb Raider, good mid-80s frames per second with everything cranked to the max. Now, for me, my monitor is a 60, the refresh rate of 60. So anything over 60 frames per second doesn't really matter to me. So the fact that I can now turn everything up and get higher detail and still maintain, at least 60 frames per second, a little bit less on Grand Theft Auto 5, which is fine. My CPU might be bottlenecking that a little bit, but even still, in real-world gaming and real-world testing, the 1070, damn good card. Definitely a little bit of an improvement over the 970 in Grand Theft Auto, and I imagine there would be one with the other games, but again, my stupid testing, I effed that one up. But anyway, I hope you liked the video. I hope it piqued your interest at least a little bit, and especially to see what this card can do in real-life testing with everything turned up and the way you would actually play the game, not just test it. So if you liked the video, give me a like. If you didn't, I get it because I effed up the testing. But if you think someone may enjoy this, please give me a share. That's the best way to support the channel. So hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.